In the headlines, COVID-19 protocols to continue as Dominica lifts its state of emergency on Tuesday. Trade unions discuss welfare of Liat employees as the airline announces plans of shutting down. And police investigate 2 tragic deaths which took place over the weekend. I'm Andrea Louis with the Channel 5 News, back with the details after this.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 7 days of unlimited social messaging, 3 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, 700 local anywhere calls and texts with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $29. Keep your number when you switch to Dominica's most reliable LTE network. Buy wherever you top up. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
Thank you for staying with us. First up, Dominica is expected to revert to what is being called the new normal this week. Government will not extend the curfew beyond Tuesday of this week, when the emergency powers regulations are expected to come to an end. The health minister says this does not mean an end to respiratory etiquette.
We're back to where we were before, but before we didn't have COVID. Now that we have COVID, we have to make sure that we can practice all these public health and social measures that we've had in place, which is what has brought our success. And so whether it's the hand hygiene, whether it's our sneezing or respiratory etiquette, whether it's our wearing of our masks, whether it's our sanitizing, we have to emphasize that. Just to bring to point, as a matter of fact, up to March of this year, influenza-like symptoms were down to 4 cases per week. Prior to these measures we put for COVID, we used to be getting 25 cases per week. So it just shows you how wearing a mask, washing of hands, proper respiratory etiquette can cut down these things. So this is what we want to emphasize, that the public should, as soon as these things, the emergency hours are over, we have to get back to practicing. Well, we should do it even now, but even more.
Another major decision expected soon is the reopening of the country's borders. With the reopening of the borders come the risk of the importation of new infections from people coming into the country.
We have been going over this over the past few weeks, and we've put some protocols in place. But before I tell you about the testing, we have to appreciate the fact that there's no blueprint as to how you open a border. It hasn't been done before. This is uncharted territory, and so it's not like we can just take this protocol from somewhere else. We have to tweak it, and we have to be pragmatic in our approach.
Last week alone, I had about 16 meetings, both national meetings and regional meetings on opening of borders. 16.
And everybody's scrambling, trying to figure what's the best way, but no blueprint. But what we thought would be the ideal thing is, prior to coming here, we would love that you have a PCR test done, preferably within 72 hours. And we also have the online questionnaire that the person has to fill out. This questionnaire has all the information as to your address, where you've been before for the past 14 days, where you've traveled, where do you work, because that's important for us, your different social habits. And it's a nice comprehensive questionnaire. And based on that questionnaire, we can have an idea in which category do you fit you, low, high, medium risk, and then we can take measures accordingly. But with this PCR being done preferably within 72 hours, and even when you get here, so that's the first line of defense. The second one is the questionnaire. The third one, when you get here as well, we have temperature screening. If you're 99.8 and below, then you go to the next stage. If you're 99.8 and above, then you go to the secondary screening. So that's a 4th line of defense again. And then we also have the rapid antibody test, which we'll be doing here. And then based on this, that's another 5th line of defense. So
everybody who comes to Dominica will be subjected to a rapid test?
No question about that, definitely. So you're coming in before, it's best that you have a PCR test. When you come here, we still do the rapid test, and based on the results of the rapid test, we can decide where we filter you. If you have a positive IgM, which means you might be likely to have it, and then we have to do swabbing. So we also can do swabbing at our environmental health office at the Douglas Child.
There are also plans in place to deal with the Dominican citizens returning home when the borders reopen.
As regards to quarantine, there are different types of quarantine. So they don't necessarily, since we have the PCR before, since we have the rapid test before, we feel confident that we can send our Dominicans to their homes, their residence. However, all of this information goes out to the district team, and the district team monitors them. So it's basically self-quarantine, but it's not unsupervised. It is supervised, it is monitored, and we'll be taking a look at all of these. So yes, they can go home, but not just free for all. We will be monitoring them, we'll be supervising them. So it's self-quarantine, and we'll be but we're only doing that because we had 2 tests already. Yeah.
Now, people are asking, people say, well, this thing is costing the government a lot of money to do all of its tests. And they're asking here on the WhatsApp message, is the visitor the ones paying for the PCR test?
Yes, the visitor will pay for the PCR test, definitely.
In other top stories, 2 young men tragically lost their lives in separate incidents over the weekend, one involving a deadly shooting and the other death during a traffic collision.
The Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force is conducting investigations into the death of 23-year-old Damian Ernest, male adult of Backstreet, Kingshill, whose lifeless body was discovered on the road leading to the Bury Lake about 11 a.m. on Saturday 27th of June 2020. The body was met lying face down in a pool of blood, and upon examination, what appeared to be multiple gunshot wounds to the torso was observed. Commonwealth of Dominica Police Force commenced investigations into a fatal traffic collision, which occurred about 5:40 p.m. on Saturday 27th June 2020 on the Fonkole Public Road in the vicinity of the Fonkole bus stop. Deceased is Jaron Pascal, male, 19 years, of Stock Farm. The collision involved Nissan X-Trail registration number PR585, driven by Bianca Toussaint, female, 30 years, of Maho, and Yamaha scooter registration number PV825 with Pascal as rider. According to information, the collision occurred while the rider and scooter were traveling in a southerly direction on the Fonkole Public Road, and the Nissan X-Trail was traveling in a northerly direction on the same road. The impact threw the rider off the scooter, where he sustained injuries to his head and other parts of his body.
On to health matters. Prime Minister Skerrit says a part of the mandate of the National Health Commission is to improve the management structure of Dominica's healthcare systems. The Commission also aims to ensure there are systems of accountability and attract and retain qualified professionals. Cabinet established the Commission in 2017 to improve quality and effectiveness of healthcare services to nationals and visitors.
We were required as a Commission to have a look at various reports that would have been produced by agencies, notably agencies like PAHO, University of the West Indies, and others on health and healthcare in Dominica. And we're going to do that with some emphasis on the hospital's management, and also to take a look at reforming the way fees are paid, how the hospital is financed. But also, there's a recognition that there are deficiencies within the Ministry of Health. And so another objective was to take a look at the ministry, have a look at its structure, and to see what gaps exist and what recommendations we can make to you and Cabinet on policy that would impact the leadership of the ministry. We also, and very importantly, given the responsibility to review systems and procedures at the hospital, and in particular, the governance structure at the hospital. And on that we have done a lot of work, because a fundamental problem at the hospital today is the absence of clear leadership. And that's not necessarily blaming anyone, it is just a fact of life. And so it is, in fact, a primary objective of the Commission to take a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world, so that hospitals are managed by a board whereby responsibility for day-to-day operation, responsibility for policy development obtains much closer to the hospital where it's actually happening. And for that to happen, and to happen well, the budget, which is normally approved by government, is passed on, so to speak, to a hospital board which will have responsibility for managing.
The National Health Commission is chaired by Dr. Dorian Chillingford. In other developments, a decision has been taken to liquidate Caribbean airline Liat. Julian Morris has that story.
This action following a series of unsuccessful months due to COVID-19. This means Liat, as we know it, will cease its operations. The Antigua-based airline will be formed into a new entity that will provide vital connections between the Caribbean islands. Last year, the airlines recorded a loss of 12 million EC. Hopes of recovery this year were dashed due to the unforeseen scale of the coronavirus. Dominica is among shareholder governments who have been supporting Liat financially.
The majority shareholders of Liat met yesterday morning, Saturday. That is Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and Dominica. And we received a report from the board of directors drawing to attention certain issues confronting Liat 1974 Limited. One of the recommendations is for the winding up of Liat 1974 Limited operations and to seek to create a new entity to ensure continued service in this region. These are extraordinarily difficult times, and there are certain actions which must be taken. But I will say that we will all agree that Liat 1974 Limited has served Dominica well. We've had challenges in the past with delayed flights or cancellation of flights, but we have to say that Liat has been good to us, not only in Dominica, but the entire Caribbean. And I am convinced as a regionalist, as an integrationist, that whatever new entity comes up, that the people of Dominica must provide whatever support we can within our means to ensure that we can have intra-regional travel. Liat has shown its capacity, its abilities, obviously confronting challenges pre-COVID and certainly worsened in the COVID period. And the next step is to have a meeting of the other shareholders so concrete, decisive actions can be taken.
The other shareholder governments besides Dominica are Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
In related news, the Waterfront and Allied Workers Union joined other trade unions representing Liat employees in an over 2-hour-long virtual meeting with Liat management on Monday to discuss the liquidation of the airline and the implications for employees.
Curtis Augusta spoke with Channel 5 News following Monday's meeting.
The decision apparently that was made following the meeting of the shareholder governments on Saturday was to either liquidate or to wind up Liat and to start it with a new entity. Once you are getting into those areas, of course, in the various Caribbean islands, the question of termination of service, the question of redundancy comes up. And for us in Dominica, I would say, fortunately, we have laws that protect the workers. I could refer to Section 12 of 8902, which is the Protection of Employment Act. And that in itself refers to Section 11 that speaks to the question of redundancy. So I know that any entity or any new operation taking over the role of Liat would have to comply with those provisions. And recognizing that Liat doesn't have money, that is going to be a challenge.
Augustus says in the case of Dominica, Liat could appeal to Social Security to make the redundancy payments on its behalf.
The thing that we wanted to discuss this morning, actually, having spoken to my chairman, Dave Messiah from Antigua, was the question of the pension escrow account. And we believe, and it have happened just recently, where funds from that amount of 30% was paid to the workers to assist them with the financial challenge that they had at the time. Following this, there were requests by the members of the union in all the jurisdictions that they should be given the remainder of the pension fund. And in their meeting on Saturday, the heads of government approved of the request from the workers that they be paid the remainder of the pension funds. Now, having made that decision and having had a discussion almost 2.5 hours this morning, the management have in fact informed us that the amount have been approved and they are going to work with some speed to be able to provide the monies to the workers.
You are watching the Channel 5 News. Stay tuned for more after the break.
A new in-home experience is here. All your services bundled into one simple plan. Faster, more reliable Wi-Fi so that you can binge, play, and stream uninterrupted. Unlimited flow local landline minutes mean you can talk and talk and talk. Plus the best in TV entertainment with over 120 channels and 29 in HD. All for $160 a month with the new all-in bundle. With Flow, it only gets better.
Welcome back. Senior Minister Reginald Austri has called for an end to the economic sanctions on Venezuela. Mr. Austri, who is also the Minister for Housing and Urban Development, was speaking at a ceremony to mark the 15th anniversary of the signing of the Petro-Caribe Agreement between Dominica and the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela on Monday.
I would like to issue a call for the immediate end to the economic sanctions against Venezuela. Because the Venezuelan people are hurting. The Venezuelan people are hurting badly, and normally when sanctions are imposed as a means of achieving political gains and political ends, the people are the ones who suffer. And Venezuela is too rich in its resources. The people of Venezuela should be suffering because of sanctions imposed on them.
Venezuela's ambassador to Dominica, His Excellency Jose Savelli, denounced moves by members of the global community who try to stifle Venezuela's growth and development.
Their intention is to dismantle the Bolivarian revolution and to impose such a punishment on Venezuela that it serves as an example to any other leader or any other country that tries to develop initiatives such as Petro-Caribe. On the principle of solidarity and union among peoples, you know who is the enemy of Petro-Caribe. You also know that the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is not alone in this battle. We have important allies, such as Dominica. And I know that in the end, we will accomplish victory.
Venezuela's ambassador to Dominica was reassured that Dominica stands in solidarity with his country despite the trying times.
When many would leave and turn their back on Venezuela, we in Dominica, our 70,000 people, we stood with you. We took the brunt in the international press. We took the brunt in the international community, but we stand on principle. And our principle is, a friend is always a friend of ours. You're not only our friend in good times, but you're also a friend in bad times too. And you can take it to your capital that the government of Dominica, the people of Dominica, stands in solidarity with you, and we will be there with you until the sanctions are removed, until the situation in Venezuela will be normalized and stabilized, and the people in Venezuela can be free to enjoy a decent standard of living from the resources that they have been endowed with by the good Lord.
Getting youth to network for the ease of doing business. Among the benefits identified by one of Dominica's OECS Sustainable Development Movement ambassadors, Julian Morris tells us more.
Treadle Elwin, a co-founder and owner of multimedia company 365 MMP, has been selected as one of Dominica's ambassadors for the Sustainable Development Movement 2020 Summit of the OECS Commission. The ambassador is responsible for growing the network of movers for the SDM 2020 summit, while planning and implementing local programs geared at spreading awareness about the Sustainable Development Goals (SDGs). Elwin, who has a large social media reach and has been in business for almost 10 years, plans to use his influence to get youth on board with the Sustainable Development movement.
The networking opportunities, guys. You're talking over 20,000 persons interested in being a part of this movement. That's 20,000 people you could potentially network with, right? Like I said, I was chosen because of my reach, because of my network, right? So networking and marketing is something I'm passionate about, and I think any person who is existing within this business space should take advantage of such a networking opportunity, right? So youth, young men, get out there, meet people, expand your network, and that's the opportunity for that.
In September, the ambassadors will participate in the first ever Sustainable Development Movement Summit, a space where senior government officials, industry and private sector leaders, global entrepreneurs and civil society will converge for 2 days.
Well, definitely, I believe this is something that should continue. Obviously, this is dependent on how successful this first event is. But with ambassadors like myself, we are going to try our very best to at least make sure on our end in Dominica we get as much persons involved, so this could be successful, right? Like I said, it's something that should continue, but it will be all dependent on how the event goes.
The SDM ambassador hopes to have a significant impact on youth in Dominica during his tenure.
As ambassador, one of the things I'm supposed to achieve is to get at least 100 persons to sign up virtually for the SDM summit. I believe I'll get like 500 or 1,000, right? But my main aim is to inspire youth, persons like myself, entrepreneurs, young business people to get out there and expand your network and learn from what others are doing in the region, right? We have similar problems in the Caribbean. It's time that we start attacking it together and not as solo nations. So that's one of the things that I know the OECS is keen on trying to achieve with such a summit.
Elwin is encouraging the public to follow him on his social media platforms to get more information and support the Sustainable Development movement.
And Dominica's other Sustainable Development Movement ambassador wants to raise awareness on youth involvement in climate change issues. Safia Vital, who has a background in sustainable development, studied environmental change and management in the United Kingdom and is doing research on different aspects of sustainable development. One of the responsibilities of the ambassadors is to facilitate discussions that will unearth innovative solutions that are positioned to accelerate the global comeback of small island developing states, SIDS. Ms. Vital believes the conversations on climate change are essential as it affects the OECS and wider international community.
So we're expected really to raise awareness, I think, at the core of sustainable development. I think, for example, one big thing in the region that we talk a lot about is climate change and climate resilience. As small island developing states, we're really vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and we've seen that in Dominica firsthand. But I think that above the buzzword of resilience, I think people don't understand the core of what it's really about, and how many sectors play into building resilience. So, the movement, I think, is really about raising awareness, getting people involved and seeing in whatever sector that they're involved in that they have a part to play in broader sustainable development.
Vital wants to focus on raising awareness among youth and other communities in Dominica, though it may be challenging.
I think, sometimes it's challenging to get people interested in something that might not be on their radar generally, but I think that once you bring it home to them in terms of, translate it into things that they're interested in and showing them how, for example, business is a part of sustainable development. If they're in agriculture, that's a part of sustainable development. So everything plays into it. So I think once you come from that angle, it's easy for people to come on board.
The SDM ambassador is urging Dominican youth to get on board with the program and make a difference in the country and the wider world.
I think it's really important because, I think that as young people, we should be invested in the development, the growth of our country, holistically, environmentally, economically, socially. And, you know, a movement like that is really about that. It's really about us pushing our countries forward. I think that especially as small islands that are very vulnerable, sometimes we see ourselves as, you know, insignificant on the global scale. But I really believe that through something like the Sustainable Development Movement, we can show on a global scale that we can be incubators of innovation, that we can, you know, show the world best practices. That I think youth participation is really, really important. And to see, you know, potentially hundreds of Dominican youth involved in this movement, I think that that would be a really good legacy to leave behind as an ambassador.
Flow helps you stay connected to what matters. Simple plans and a better network mean that you can enjoy 7 days of unlimited social messaging, 3 gigabytes of reliable data to use as you like, 700 local anywhere calls and texts with the always-on prepaid plan, all for $29. Keep your number when you switch to Dominica's most reliable LTE network. Buy wherever you top up. Switch to Flow. It only gets better.
To end the news, the headlines again. COVID-19 protocols to continue as Dominica lifts its state of emergency on Tuesday. Trade unions discuss the welfare of Liat employees as the airline announces plans of shutting down. And police investigate 2 tragic deaths which took place over the weekend. Feel free to access our past newscasts on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the entire production team, I'm Andrea Louis, and to all of our viewers around the world, thank you so much for watching. Join us tomorrow.